If you lose your engine, you get exactly one chance to put the plane on the ground. The Power Off 180 proves you can do it. The standard is strict. You pull the power to idle, fly a 180-degree pattern, and touch down on your exact target, with an allowance of 0 feet short and a maximum of 200 feet long. Without an engine, you are stripped of your standard power controls. You can't just throttle up if you get low. Instead, you only have two physical tools left to manipulate: kinetic energy and potential energy. In the context of flight, your kinetic energy is your airspeed. In this engine-out scenario, you manage your airspeed exclusively by adjusting the pitch of the aircraft's nose. Your potential energy is your altitude and glide path. Since you can't climb, this energy is managed entirely by the physical path you choose to drive over the ground. Mastering this maneuver requires a continuous, calculated trade of potential energy for kinetic energy to arrive at one precise geographical coordinate. This diagram outlines the entire procedure. Step 1 is the setup. You fly a normal traffic pattern, but the moment the aircraft is directly abeam your chosen touchdown point, you pull the throttle completely to idle. This establishes your downwind key position. Your immediate first action at this abeam point is to pitch the nose to capture and strictly maintain exactly 100 knots of airspeed. Once airspeed is locked in, you need to calculate your descent based on the winds aloft. Wind changes ground speed, dictating how long you'll be in the air before reaching the runway. This chart maps the specific altitude loss targets for your downwind leg based on those winds. If winds aloft are light, 10 knots or less, expect to descend 200 feet. For moderate winds of 11 to 20 knots, plan to lose 150 feet. And for strong winds of 21 to 30 knots, you should only lose 100 feet before turning. Systematically adjusting downwind descent based on wind speed preserves the exact mathematical amount of potential energy you need to reach the runway, regardless of how heavily a headwind penalizes your ground speed. Returning to our pattern map, you next execute the base turn. Roll into a standard 30-degree bank angle and continue to strictly hold your kinetic energy at 100 knots. Halfway through this turn is your first energy check. You need to visually assess whether your current glide path can reach the 1,000-foot aiming markers on the runway and verify your airspeed is within 5 knots of your 100-knot target. If both your potential and kinetic energy states are correct, the trigger action is to immediately deploy 50% flaps and pitch for a new airspeed of 90 to 95 knots. When you deploy those 50% flaps, it shifts your physical aiming point approximately 200 feet closer to the runway threshold. Deploying flaps serves a dual purpose. It slows the aircraft and it steepens your glide ratio. You are forced to track a visual target that moves backward toward you as drag increases. As you enter the final approach, you reach the decision point. This is where you perform a second energy check to verify if your current path will reach that newly shifted aim point. If your path and speed are correct here, you deploy 100% flaps. This pulls your visual aiming point an additional 300 feet closer to the threshold. This matrix shows how to troubleshoot your approach. If you reach this point and find yourself in a high and fast state with excess energy, you need to bleed off altitude. You do this by turning away from the runway centerline or by deliberately overshooting the final turn to lengthen your flight path. Conversely, if you evaluate your energy and find yourself in a low and slow state, your energy is depleted. To correct this, you must pitch the nose down and turn slightly into the runway to cut the corner and shorten your distance. You are never a passive passenger during an engine-out descent. You have to actively squander or conserve energy through these lateral track changes to guarantee you arrive at the threshold correctly. Your final approach targets are strict. As you cross the runway threshold, the aircraft must be approximately 50 feet above ground level and flying at exactly 78 knots. Once you cross the threshold, the aircraft will experience a short field float. Due to ground effect and your remaining momentum, the plane will glide approximately 500 feet down the runway before the wheels touch down. This animation shows why tailwinds on final approach require immediate correction. For every single knot of tailwind, the aircraft will float an additional 100 feet past your intended mark, which can easily push you out of standards. The last step is the round out and hold off phase. You need delicate pitch control here. letting the speed bleed off smoothly so the wheels touch down squarely on the 1,000-foot markers. Nailing the power off 180 is a validation of your situational awareness. It proves your ability to visualize shifting aim points, and it confirms you've mastered the exchange rate between altitude, airspeed, and drag.